get everything kind of set up. So I will be running the slides, but this is a presentation that is done by our phenomenal registered dietitian, licensed dietitian, Lori Shell. She is a member of Rockville Internal Medicine Group and has a wonderful presentation to kind of help close out our colon cancer awareness month for last month. She was going to kind of pipe in with Dr. Wu, but you guys had such great questions that she didn't get a chance to present. So we're kind of carrying her over into April to kind of close out our colon cancer awareness month for her to talk about a healthy gut equals a healthy colon. So I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Shell, and let's get started.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
So everybody can see the screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, you take it away, Ms. Shell.
Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about, it was supposed to coincide with the Colorectal Awareness Month, and actually last month was also National Nutrition Month. And so we were going to, as Dr. Holmes said, try to combine a discussion on both colorectal health and diet, but there's just so much information and lots of great questions. So we decided to do the two presentations separately. So today I'm going to talk about healthy gut and how to have a healthy colon. Next slide.
I'm working on it.
Okay. Okay, so the objectives for today are, I'm going to talk about what is a biome and what is in your gut, what is a probiotic, what is a prebiotic, how to make a healthier biome and gut, what foods contain probiotics and prebiotics, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some other gut health. And one of the very pressing questions all the time is, should you take a supplement? And we'll have some time, hopefully, for some questions and answers as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is in your gut? Humans need bacterial genes to aid in basic processes like digestion of food, and your body is loaded with trillions of bacteria. Paired with other tiny organisms like viruses and fungi, they make what's known as the microbiota or the microbiome. The mix of bacteria in your body is unique to you. It's determined partly by your mother's microbiota and partly by your diet and lifestyle. There are between 300 to 500 different kinds containing nearly 2 million genes that live in your gut. They line your entire digestive system, but most live in your intestines and colon, and they help process food and affect everything from your metabolism to your mood to your immune system. They may be tied to your risk of diabetes, obesity, depression, and colon cancer. Protozoa are microscopic, one-celled organisms that can be free-living or parasitic in nature. They are able to multiply in humans, which contributes to their survival and also permits serious infections to develop from just a single organism. Everybody has been so focused on the bacteria in the gut that they've completely missed that there's a whole ecosystem of fungi that not only lives in the gut, but works intimately with bacteria to control health in positive and negative ways. If you look at bacteria alone without taking into account fungi, you're missing an important layer. Yeast keeps your digestive system healthy and in balance. The right amount in your body helps you minimize your immune system do its job. Yeast is part of a healthy mix of bacteria in your gut, and it can help you absorb vitamins and minerals from your food and even fight disease. So basically, digestion starts in the mouth, then to the esophagus, then stomach, small intestine, and then large intestine. There are several factors that influence your microbiota: age, diet, genes, environment, and medications, particularly antibiotics. And of these factors, diet is the most controllable. So again, the microbiome is responsible for metabolizing your nutrients from food and acting as a protective barrier against infections in the intestines. The microbes thrive on various food parts of the food, such as fiber, and some microbes make compounds that seems to keep us healthier, while others seems to produce substances that may worsen our health. A few dietary changes that can make a big difference, although gut microbiota change is believed to change slowly over time and not overnight. Increasing high fiber, complex carbs such as beans, lentils, whole grain, bread, cereals, and grains such as barley, bran, bulgur, farro, and quinoa is a good start. The more variety of plant-based foods, the more diverse our bacteria become. Alrighty, so hold 1 second there, Dr. Holmes.
You want me to go back one?
Nope, you're fine. You can just stay there. I'm just going to go over a little bit about food digestion and absorption of nutrients and water. So just so you know where food is digested and the nutrients and water are absorbed, and they provide the nutrients and water the body needs to live, function, and stay healthy. So it's really important to support the process with the GI tract and keep everything working, like your muscles, which alternate contracting and relaxing and pushing food along. So what we also need to focus on, and I'll go over a little more later, is healthy diet, be physically active, and get enough sleep. Also to manage your stress. Okay. Now we're on to the probiotics. So probiotics, they're defined as live microorganisms which grant a health benefit on the host. Although most probiotics are bacteria, one strain of yeast, which is called Saccharomyces boulardii, has been found to be an effective probiotic in double-blind clinical studies. Probiotics are often taken as a supplement to help colonize your gut with good microorganisms. Probiotics are living microorganisms that, when ingested, provide a health benefit. However, the scientific community often disagrees on what the benefits are, as well as which strains of bacteria are responsible. You can get probiotics from supplements as well as from foods prepared by bacterial fermentation. So oftentimes people will ask me when I meet with them whether they should be taking probiotics to help their gut if they're feeling some abdominal discomfort like gas or bloating. And I usually, kind of try to tell people that they are still being researched. There's no conclusive evidence, and that probiotics do not permanently change things. So it's kind of a temporary thing, kind of like the same as when people see advertising for digestive enzymes. And I try to explain to people it might help temporarily, but it does not replace your digestive enzymes permanently. So we have to alter our diet, and I do a lot of education on changing diets for what we call more of an irritable bowel, which is kind of symptoms including reflux, gas, excessive bloating, diarrhea, constipation, abdominal discomfort. So when you try to take a supplement, and keep in mind, supplements are not regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. So we're not sure exactly what may be in the probiotics. And more research has to be done. I don't think they are harmful. I usually tell people it doesn't seem to be harmful, but whether it helps you is something you would have to try out yourself and see how it goes. But the diet changes that we do a lot of education on, the gastroenterologists in our practice are very well informed about the outcomes of dietary changes to help gut function. So just keep in mind the changes could be temporary, and really the diet has a much bigger role than taking supplements. But probiotic foods, and I'll review them several times throughout the presentation, but they include yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, tempeh, and kimchi. And they should not be confused with prebiotics, and I'll go over those as well. But prebiotics, which are carbs, often dietary fibers, they help feed the friendly bacteria that's already in the gut. So just to review again, probiotics are live bacteria that, when consumed in adequate amounts, provide health benefits. Probiotics are believed to help maintain or restore a healthy gut microbiome. Probiotic bacteria are found in fermented dairy products like yogurt, buttermilk, soft cheeses, and kefir, as well as fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, tempeh, and miso. Okay, so here are the health promotions of gut microbiome with probiotic. Okay, and just to reiterate again, it is an emerging area of research. We're not sure what makes up a quote unquote healthy gut, and the amounts and types of bacteria in the gut microbiome vary between people. There are many types of probiotics, and different types have different effects, but the two most studied are lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. Research on these has demonstrated beneficial effects on diarrheal conditions and with irritable bowel syndrome and ulcerative colitis. The amount of probiotics needed is unknown, and currently there are no established recommended intake levels for probiotics. They are considered dietary supplements and therefore are not regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. So I just want to reiterate again, what I usually tell patients is if something in fact was conclusive evidence as far as helping with a healthy gut and to reduce gastrointestinal symptoms such as bloating and diarrhea, constipation, and gas, if in fact something was conclusively proven, then we would all be doing it or taking it, and we would all feel much better, and it would make everybody's lives a little easier. So we would know that we would just take probiotics and everything would go away. On the flip side, as I said earlier, there's no harm, more than likely, if taken as prescribed on the bottle, even though it's not regulated, to try probiotics. But they do believe that this gut and the bacteria in your gut starts from a very young age, as a little toddler, as far as making sure you grow up with the right gut function. So we don't know really what makes it up, and the two that have been studied the most, as I said, are lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. All righty, next slide. Okay, now prebiotics. Prebiotics are food for the gut bacteria. Many prebiotics are found in high fiber foods that are not broken down by human digestive enzymes and make it to the large intestines where they are fermented by gut bacteria. So these include vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes. Beans and peas are among the best sources. When gut bacteria ferment prebiotics, some bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids, and these provide energy to the cells lining gut, and it helps maintain a healthy gut barrier, and it lowers the risks of infection. Prebiotics are also associated with reducing the risk of colon cancer, enhancing calcium absorption. They're associated with relieving constipation and diarrhea, and they can enter the bloodstream and go to other organs where they act as signals to communicate with the brain and regulate the immune system and inflammation in the body. Next slide. Okay, so the steps to a healthy gut microbiome. Kind of going back to basic nutrition, growing up on a healthy diet. It's always beneficial to have a lot of your plate with fruits and vegetables. Make half your grains whole grains and vary your protein routine. So probiotics are found in the fermentable vegetables we talked about, fermented soybean products, and then fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, which are beans and peas, are among the best sources of naturally occurring prebiotic fiber. Probiotic foods are the ones that have the live bacteria. It is beneficial if you're going to rely on fermented dairy foods such as yogurt, buttermilk, soft cheeses, and kefir to move as a probiotic, to move to the low fat or fat-free ones. The fat in our dairy products is primarily saturated fat, so it may have some other downfalls as far as using saturated fat if you do have a history of high cholesterol, and calories from fat are high. And therefore, if you're trying to lose weight as well, it would be better to switch to the low fat or fat-free dairy. Next slide. Okay, so if anybody would like to take notes, this is put out a lot more easily to see. And these are the top foods with probiotics. So yogurt, let's talk about yogurt for a second. It is one of the most familiar sources of probiotics. Good bacteria. I think a lot of people come to me and they're trying to take yogurt, or when they're on an antibiotic, they try to take yogurt so that they can replace some of the good bacteria that might be affected from the antibiotic. And it helps to keep a healthy balance in your gut. So studies suggest that probiotics can help ease also lactose intolerance, and they can help lower or reduce gas, diarrhea, and other tummy troubles. You can pay, as we said, for the supplements, but any that have live and active cultures are going to help. Sauerkraut. No, go back one slide still. We're on the same. Yeah. Choose the unpasteurized kind. The pasteurizing process, which is used to treat most supermarket brands, kills the active good bacteria. So sauerkraut and the similar but spicy Korean dish kimchi are also loaded with immune-boosting vitamins that can help ward off infection. Miso soup is a popular breakfast food in Japan, and this fermented soybean paste can get your system moving. Probiotic-filled miso is often used to make a salty soup that's low in calories and high in B vitamins and protective antioxidants. Soft cheeses, again, best to pick the low-fat or reduced fat cheeses. They are good for your digestion, but not all probiotics can survive the journey through your stomach and intestines. So research finds that strains in fermented soft cheeses like Gouda are hardly enough to make it. Kefir. They sell a lot of kefir now where the yogurts are in the store. They discovered that, according to a legend, that shepherds in the Caucasus Mountains, which divide southeastern Europe from Asia, discovered the milk they carried tended to ferment into a bubbly beverage. Thick, creamy, and tangy like yogurt, kefir has its own strains of probiotic bacteria, plus a few helpful yeast varieties. Sourdough bread. I know this became a really popular thing over the pandemic with everybody home. Lots of people were experimenting with their own homemade sourdough bread. And this sourdough bread packs a probiotic that can also help digestion. Acidophilus milk. One of the easiest ways to get probiotics is to use this kind of milk, which has been fermented with bacteria. You may see it labeled as sweet acidophilus milk. Buttermilk, too, is also rich in probiotics. Another one is sour pickles. I think it might be on the next slide. When looking for pickles for probiotics, choose naturally fermented kinds where vinegar wasn't used in the pickling process. A sea salt and water solution feeds the growth of good bacteria, and it may make sour pickles help with your digestion. Tempeh is made from a base of fermented soybeans. The Indonesian patty makes a type of natural antibiotic that fights certain bacteria. It's also high in protein, and people describe its flavor as smoky, nutty, and similar to a mushroom. And you can marinate it or use it in place of a meat. So, supplements. Probiotics aren't only in foods. They also come in capsules, tablet, powder, and liquid. Although these supplements don't provide the nutrition that foods can offer, they're easy to use. If you think they might work for you, you can talk to your doctor. And if you are ill or have an immune system problem, you also want to be cautious about taking probiotic supplements. So I usually say to, when you're talking to a doctor, if you do try to take a probiotic or want to start to take a probiotic, to mention to them, just like you would any other supplement you might take that is not regulated by the FDA, meaning not a prescription of any form, because sometimes supplements can interact with medications, or sometimes they interact with foods. So it's always a good idea to just run it by your physician as well before trying to take too many supplements at once. Next slide. Okay, what about prebiotics? So on the other hand, some experts say that a prebiotic diet rich in fiber and a variety of foods like fruits and vegetables can act like a fertilizer or a good bacteria, permanently increasing the diversity to keep them in balance. So these are some of the foods that are highest in prebiotics: Jerusalem artichokes, bananas, oatmeal, honey, maple syrup, and legumes are good prebiotics. And lowering the sugar in your diet, your saturated fat, and alcohol is also helpful, and increasing your exercise. There's been some researchers that have actually shown that athletes have a more diverse microbiome. A diet high in prebiotics, including things like onions, whole wheat bread, whole wheat bran, whole wheat flour, asparagus, and leeks, helps to keep our gut bugs healthy and happy by providing food for them. So also to consider, not just eating healthy, but staying active is also really important. And also relieving the stress in your diet, whatever that might be. If you like to garden, if you like to play with your dogs or your cats, mindfulness training is really helpful also. Next slide. So here's a little meme that I found, a little comic strip that says, I have inner beauty and I have the video from my colonoscopy to prove it. So it's just kind of funny. Next slide. Okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, I just sent you a comment from a patient that we got. I G-chatted it to you.
I was going to do comments and questions at the end.
Oh, got it. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to go over a little bit and shift gears a little bit to go over colon cancer and diet. And as I think people are aware, the recommendations for colonoscopies has been lowered for age. We're seeing a lot more colon cancer and gastrointestinal illnesses in younger people. So I wanted to just touch base a little bit on colon cancer. It's kind of vague, of course, as far as everything in moderation and balancing everything. But I think it's also important for people to realize and go back to the basics, because as we know nowadays, there's many diets out there that are not balanced. We have very high protein, very low carb. We have keto. We have, low fat, high carb. So a lot of people are doing a variety of different approaches, usually with the end result of trying to lose weight or manage another illness. But they do tend to lose sight of eating a healthy, balanced diet. So let me get my notes out. Okay, so we talked a little bit about earlier about making half your plate fruits and vegetables. Yeah, you can put them all up there if you want, Dr. Holmes, that's fine. Make half your plate fruits and vegetables. They provide nutrients and phytochemicals that function as antioxidants. They provide nutrients and phytochemicals that support the immune system. Also, you might want to consider making half of your whole grains and vary your protein routine. So fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes are good sources of fiber. Fiber binds, dilutes, and rapidly removes potential carcinogens. So one of the goals is to not have food stay in your gut, because sometimes it becomes fermentable as well. So it produces excess bacteria. So we want to keep everything going. And obviously, as you increase your fiber, it's important to remember to increase your fluid so that things don't get bulked up and stuck in your gut. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes are good sources of prebiotic fibers. Gut bacteria ferment prebiotic fibers, producing short-chain fatty acids, which are also associated with reducing colon cancer. When you talk about varying your protein routine, oftentimes people might consider just rotating their types of animal product meats, whether it's chicken or turkey, and everyone's pretty aware to limit their red meat. But it's also a good idea to sometimes alternate with non-animal sources of protein. We talked earlier about tempeh. There's legumes, which are a good source of fiber, and prebiotic fibers, which are associated with a lower risk of colon cancer. We do recommend avoiding processed meats. What does this mean? Basically, anything that's been smoked or cured or salted. They usually have an addition of preservatives, and also red meat or a high red meat intake has been associated with colon cancer. So these are things like bacon and sausage and bologna and hot dogs and salami, and some of those other processed meats. If you drink alcohol, it is obviously recommended to do so in moderation. Alcohol is associated with certain types of cancer, one of them being colon. We try to maintain a healthy weight. Excess body fat increases the risk of certain types of cancer, including colon cancer. So this is where I also work with patients, one-on-one, in order to help them get a balanced diet, also including all the food groups, with the hopes of also assisting with some weight loss if that's what their goals are. So we talk about the balanced diet and why and how these different food groups play a role in helping them to reduce their calories to promote weight loss. And we know, in addition to colon cancer, a healthy weight is so helpful in so many different diseases, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, lowers the risk of stroke, and many other illnesses. Physical activity, we've already talked a lot about that as well, but it's important also to help lower the certain types of cancer, including colon cancer. It also can assist with achieving a healthier weight, and other mechanisms also unrelated to the body weight. Okay. Really quickly, before you go to the next slide, Dr. Holmes, I just want to talk also briefly, since it's part of gut health. I have a lot of patients who come with constipation, also diverticulosis, which is another condition where you basically develop these inflamed, diverticulitis is the active form, where you develop these inflamed pockets into your intestines. So the goal is basically to prevent this diverticulitis by keeping fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. So high fiber and prebiotics. Most people do not eat enough dietary fiber. So fiber does help with constipation and diverticulosis. Most people do not have enough dietary fiber, and the dietary reference intake for fiber is about 14 grams per 1,000 calories. So I never count calories with my patients. That's not the tool I use to help them achieve their goals. But just so you know, if you're having a 2,000 calorie diet, that's about 28 grams per day. So I generally use the rule of 25 to 35 grams per day. The average American has 12 grams of fiber a day. For constipation, it's also important to drink enough water. I mentioned this earlier. When you increase fiber, fiber absorbs water, making your larger, softer stools, and they're easier to pass through. So when you do increase your fiber, not there yet, you also need to increase your water. For your dietary reference for water, 13 cups per day for males and 9 cups per day for females. It's important, if you are going to start to increase your fiber in your diet, that you do it slowly so that you don't have any belly aches from doing so. Increase your physical activity. Stronger and more elastic intestinal muscles allow for faster intestinal movement. So it is recommended. I know a lot of people are using the Fitbit, trying to get 10,000 steps a day. I usually just say anything is better than nothing and increase it slowly, either the duration, cross-train, the intensity, at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate to intense exercise per week, or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous, intense physical activity a week, or an equivalent combination of moderate and vigorous intense physical activity a week. It's also really helpful to do some muscle strengthening as well, several times a week. And that also helps with bone health. Okay, so next slide. So here is our summary, steps to a healthy gut. We want to eat a healthy diet, make half your plate fruits and vegetables, make at least half your plate grains and make them whole grains. Move to low-fat or fat-free milk or yogurt. Vary your protein between lean animal protein and some non-animal protein. Drink plenty of water. Drink alcohol in moderation. Be active. Maintain a healthy body weight. Good sleep. Manage your stress. And as I said earlier, most of this gut health is basically going to help so many chronic illnesses, conditions, etc. So as a dietitian, what I do is I basically look at the whole, you can put it up, Dr. Holmes, one more slide. There you go. So how can a registered dietitian help you? I can basically look at you as a whole, the big picture, all the conditions you are experiencing, and I can personalize diet recommendations for you. So oftentimes when people tell me they've done various diets on their own or outside in another program of some sort, the programs are all great. They all help people generally meet their goals, but what they don't do is they don't personalize it. So oftentimes, you know, if I have a patient who is, you know, diabetic and has high cholesterol or high LDL or triglycerides, I can talk to them both about their diabetes, and I can talk to them about the foods that affect their cholesterol levels. So I'm not just focusing on only weight loss, because weight loss can also come from low calorie carbs, which still has to be in control, or lower calorie carbs or moderate amounts of carbs, which would help their diabetes. But I can also focus on all of them. And in general, we have been doing a lot of education, a lot for gut health recently. More and more studies are kind of showing the outcomes of watching particular foods on gut health. And it also can help me personalize. You go over, you know, how to meet your fiber needs, which, you know, fruits and vegetables are easier to digest than others. Where can I get the most source or maximize my amount of fiber for people who don't eat a lot of whole grains, fresh fruits and vegetables? And basically I can do more personalized meal plans. So any questions? And you can reach the office anytime, and if you're interested in an appointment.
Okay, so I am going to stop sharing my screen as soon as I figure out how to do that. Stop sharing. Okay, and so I'm going to pull up the Q&A portion. So let's see. I'm going to start with some questions. Are you ready, Miss Lori Shell?
I am.
Okay. So one of the messages that I got was, I was invited to this discussion because I have colitis. Can I eat yeast? I have totally removed dairy and gluten.
So what's interesting is things like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, I have found, being that they are inflammatory bowel disease, are better or mainly managed through pharmaceuticals, through medications. But with that said, there are many people who also have some or notice some food intolerances when they have these conditions. Like oftentimes they are lactose intolerant. Some of them also have sensitivity to gluten. And then we go through some specific foods. So when you're asking about yeast, a lot of people do feel better without any yeast or gluten in their diet. And that's primarily because gluten is hard to digest, even in the best of guts. So a lot of times people will for example, say, I think I have gluten intolerance, or I think I'm got celiac disease. And a lot of times they'll take out the gluten and they'll feel better. And I try to remind people that sometimes it's just because it's difficult to digest, even in the healthiest of guts. So, one of the better ways to do that, in my opinion, would be, instead of eliminating it, if you in fact do not have celiac, which is actually an allergy, I would basically reduce and increase some of your carbs coming from non-gluten containing or not bread or yeast containing starches. Does that answer the question?
I think so. I'm going to go to the next question. I was vegan for a couple of years, and at this point, I eat mostly plant-based with no dairy. Unfortunately, I have a history of many polyps. Is there anything I can do to limit or stop the production of polyps?
I mean, not generally from a diet standpoint that I would know about. Dr. Holmes, do you have any, from a physician standpoint, if polyps are more genetic or?
Polyps really tend to be more of a genetic component. Unfortunately, there's nothing that I particularly know of from a primary care perspective that can, dietary wise, that can like limit or address the production of polyps, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen anything like that either. But, I guess keeping your gut health, you can maybe between, colonoscopies have a chance of maybe minimizing or reducing the risk of them at the next test, to go back and make sure you're getting a lot of fiber. But I don't think there's any one particular food, or it doesn't have anything really to do with the biome of the gut.
Yeah. Another question that I have is, hold on, I just lost it. Give me 1 minute. Not sure if this can be covered, but how would one who is dairy-free get these probiotics?
So the probiotics are also found in some of those other sources that are not dairy containing. So the miso soup, the sauerkraut, the sourdough bread, the pickles, the tempeh. So those are the kinds of things they can take. And like we said earlier, you certainly can take a supplement if you felt like it was helpful. So what I do tell people sometimes is to go ahead and try the supplements and see if they feel better. A lot of times people might feel better at the beginning, and then they notice that it's, their symptoms have resumed again, as far as not feeling as great. So I generally would go over with them more so the easier foods to digest and the harder ones. So what I'm referring to is there's lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, and lots of whole grains that are more difficult to digest than others. So if somebody is experiencing excessive gas, excessive bleeding, abdominal discomfort, it's kind of like an all-consuming issue for them, sometimes wondering where the next bathroom is, or they're doubled over because they're so constipated. I'd like to talk to them specifically about their diets, and then when we go through the whole grains, fresh fruits, and vegetables, we go through the easier to digest ones. There are some that are harder to digest than others, so that's something I go more in depth with the individual. But if they're looking for the probiotic and they don't do dairy, there are those other options as well for probiotics, even, and a supplement if necessary.
Okay. Another question that I have is from another attendee. It was addressed that low-fat dairy should be used for weight loss purposes. I have also gotten conflicting health advice, both for weight loss purposes and fertility, stating that full fat is a better option. Can you address this conflict at all? Which one should prevail if someone wants to stay both healthy and promote fertility? They also included a link that I will copy and try to send to you, Lori, just so that way you have that link.
Okay. So this is the thing. When people say to me, I've heard the full fat is fine or not significantly different than the reduced fat. So let me clarify first, when it comes to dairy, that reduced fat, sometimes you see the word reduced fat or part skim or 2%. those definitions is a minimum of 25% less than the original. Okay, so sometimes the products are just mildly less than the original. And then what we have is the definition of low fat, which is actually defined as 3 grams of fat or less per serving. So that would also apply to cheeses. There are not a large amount of cheeses, but you could look at your labels for yogurts and dairy. And then, of course, we have fat-free, which at that point, I would not even recommend a fat-free cheese because it's not really like a cheese. It doesn't taste very good. And then the other ones, if you want to use fat-free dairy, that's fine. It just depends what people's purposes are. So this is how I look at it. If someone says I drink 1 glass of milk per day and I have 1 slice of cheese per day, the difference between them doing full fat or 2% reduced fat is minimal, because we're talking maybe about a 50-calorie difference in a glass of milk between regular and skim milk. It's about a 50 to 60 calorie difference in a cup. So 50 to 60 calories throughout the whole day is not a big deal. If somebody were to consume cheese all day long and milk and yogurt and sour cream and cream cheese, now we're talking lots of fat. And unfortunately, the regular products are mostly saturated fat. Saturated fat is the artery clogging fat. So when you look at your labels, you will see a majority of total fat in our dairy products is mostly saturated fat. It's about 66 to 75% artery clogging fat. So what that basically means is if somebody is worried about their cholesterol levels, that is relevant to that. It would be a lot of saturated fat in those products. So that's what I was saying, though, and I kind of personalized it. So if I was looking at the whole big picture and the whole big day, and someone said, I have a glass of milk once a day, and I have 1 slice of cheese once a day and a yogurt, not a huge deal. But I get people who drink gallons of milk a day and they eat cheese all day long. Now we're talking about excessive amounts of calorie and excessive amounts of fat, just so you know what the guidelines are. And again, this is also relevant for preventing colon cancers. Also, there's no fiber in dairy either, so that's not so great for your gut health either. But basically, the recommendations is no more than 7% of your total fat coming from saturated fat. And as I just mentioned, regular cheese is about 66 to 75% saturated fat in a single serving. So I kind of joke with people, you guys might appreciate this, is sometimes people say to me, yeah, I'm totally aware that bacon and sausage and bologna and those processed meats are not healthy for me. They're full of sodium, they're full of preservatives, and they have a lot of fat. And I say, it's funny you say that because cheese is in the exact same category, but everybody loves cheese so much that they don't think of it like that. And I say to people, if you ate cheese like you ate bacon once in a while, or sausage or a hot dog, a once in a while food, where you might have 1 or 2 slices, but cheese is something we incorporate in our diet all day, every day. It gets into our breakfast, it gets into our snack, it gets into our lunch, it gets into our dinner. And before you know it, we've had a lot of excess calories. And unfortunately, cheese is mostly saturated fat, even the low-fat varieties. Now, the low-fat varieties are lower in calories, but no difference in the percentage of bad fat. So to answer the long-winded question, if you're eating dairy in moderation, it's okay to do the real. If you're having it very frequently and you're trying to lose weight, I would do it. All you're missing out on really is the fat, and the fat in the dairy is saturated fat. But that fat also helps, some of it, and then also, it helps for babies to grow. But when we're full-grown adults, we don't need a lot of that fat anymore. Did that answer the question?
It did, and it made me feel bad about what I had for lunch. Thanks a lot, Ingrid. Thanks a lot.
You have a salami and cheese sandwich?
I did not, but I did have some cheese. I don't like you. Okay. So time is drawing nigh, and there are a lot of good questions. And so I really do recommend, if you still have questions for Lori, please, she is available. Schedule an appointment with her. Most insurances, I believe, are cover her services, and she would be more than happy to go over your questions and give you advice and develop a plan with you. I do want to just kind of piggybacking off of you talking about the meat. There was a question about prepackaged meat in the supermarket, like sliced turkey breast, sliced ham, or salami. Are these things part of the meats to avoid? Because, they are, packaged as like sliced turkey breast, like you have a turkey and you're slicing it. So, I'm hoping that they have less nitrates and things like that. Is, that true?
Yeah, so I am all okay with that for all of the above, gut health, weight control, pretty much everything. The only ones I recommend avoiding is the fatty ones. I sometimes kind of joke. I mean, I know a roast beef doesn't come from a roast beef, but oftentimes if you know what animal it comes from, it seems to be a little safer than when you don't know what animal it comes from, right? So if we have something like pastrami, I'm not really sure what the combination is, but um, or hot dogs. I know sometimes they say all beef, but the other ones you're not really sure. It says chicken, it says pig, it says combination of things. So yeah, so if you're having the turkey breast from the deli counter, roast beef is actually lean as well. Ham, and if you do have a sodium issue, it's always nice to request a reduced sodium or a lower sodium um, a variety as well. And I kind of joke with people because they always say, "Oh, that's full of salt," and I say, "Well, I say it's probably a lot less than the buffet you just came from as far as sodium goes from." So it's all kind of relative, but as a lot of times they have the lower sodium and they do have fresher, meaning it is does not have much of a shelf life. So any of the prepackaged stuff you might want to avoid. It's primarily because there's going to be more preservatives in them, like the packaged Lewis Rich or whatever some of those brands are. They'll have a lot more sodium and they might have more preservatives in them. That's so it has a shelf life. It can, stay there longer. But I also kind of recommend, I usually say the fresher the better, also because it's more cost effective. I think deli meat is kind of an expensive way to try to get protein in. So I know people use it. It's very quick. It's very easy. But again, moderation.
Okay. Alrighty, then the last question I think that we'll take, but I do want to just double check with you, Lori, before I ask the question. You are doing visits virtually still?
Yeah, so right now I'm in the office a few days a week. I usually do the first visit virtually because it's a longer visit and it's much easier to communicate without a mask on. And be able to talk that way and not sit across from each other with masks on for too long. And then the follow-up visits is up to the individual if they want to stay virtual or if they would like to come in. I do follow-up visits in the office and I'm here twice a week. And just to piggyback on what you were saying earlier, pretty much all commercial insurances cover nutrition. The only one that is a little bit particular is Medicare. They are particular with their diagnoses. But with that said, I have found a majority of patients that have Medicare also have a secondary insurance. And depending on their secondary, they may pick it up regardless of Medicare. So if you ever have any questions, you can always email me, or if you are part of the practice, you can send a portal message and I can check your benefits for you. So you do not have to wait on hold for any extended period of time. And like I said, many of the insurance companies do not limit your visits either. So you don't have to worry about, one and done.
Okay. So to close us out, this is the last question that we're going to be able to take. And again, please don't hesitate to schedule a virtual visit with her because there's still, unfortunately, many questions we were not able to answer. There are many breads that are labeled whole grain in the supermarket. How to choose? How to ensure that it really whole grain?
Okay, so basically anything that is considered a significant source of fiber would be the best for whole grain. So it would be really anything that has 5 or more grams per serving. A lot of people ask about net carbs. So that is the kind of benchmark for when they can subtract fiber from total carbs. It has to be a significant source, so 5 or more grams per serving. But don't be misled always, because sometimes our lighter breads still have fiber in them. So it's important to not just look at the color and assume that it's a significant source of fiber. Also, real quickly, Dr. Holmes, I got some messages sent to me really quickly too. I'm going to try to skim them for these poor people who wrote questions and didn't get them answered. So one of the questions, which fruit is the best source of fiber? So one of the best fruits where it's low in sugar and high in fiber is going to be grapefruit. It does interact with some medications though. Mm-hmm. So you have to be cautious, but that is by far one of the best fruits where it has a significant source of fiber and a lower sugar, as we all know, but not a lot of people do, but some do. Fruit is 100% carbohydrates. It is fructose. And there's lots of different sugars in there. And so the main difference is the fiber. So the higher the fiber, the slower the absorption, but it is a carbohydrate. So people do have to be cautious for weight, for excessive calories, for diabetes. And then anything really with a membrane or skin is going to be the best fruits for fiber. That was one of the questions. The next one is, miso soup seems to have high levels of salt. Is there a way to avoid this? And so my answer for that would be to basically just take into consideration the remainder of your day as far as sodium goes. I don't think that miso soup can really come out without salt in it. I'm not really sure. But what I would suggest is just take into consideration the rest of the day. So if somebody is eating mainly fresh the whole day, meaning, fresh foods, not processed, canned, frozen, that amount of sodium would not be a big, huge deal. It's all relative. So when I tell people, if you're anticipating a higher sodium food, to just take in consideration the rest of the day, you might want to be cautious of your food choices to make sure you're getting less sodium. And another question is eliminating gluten for IBS. It is extremely helpful to eliminate gluten for irritable bowel. It does not have to be a permanent elimination, but it is extremely helpful for an evaluation to see whether diet is going to assist with improving your GI issues. So basically what I tell people is that the diet we use for irritable bowel is not a cure, it's a treatment. And it's difficult to know ahead of time what's going to help you because there is no tool or diagnostic tool for irritable bowel. So a lot of times people will just say, I think I have an irritable bowel, and it's okay to say that because their bowel is irritated, whether it's diarrhea, constipation, gas, or bloating. And we oftentimes, especially in the younger generation, we like to do diet modifications before going into invasive testing. So when we do go through that, we do a fairly big overhaul or an elimination diet, and then there is a reintroduction phase. So gluten is one of the things we do try to take out at the beginning. And it does not need to be a permanent change, but it is a helpful evaluation. And then we bring the foods back in slowly and see if we can make correlations, meaning where is your threshold between the foods that are difficult to digest or the foods that are aggravating your digestive tract, and where's your threshold. So we do bring them back in, but in a very strategic way.
Okay. All righty. Well, it is 1:01, and so I know that I'm already running behind for my afternoon patients, but definitely do want to say thank you very much, Lori, for giving us a wonderful presentation. It is very informative, and I think a lot of people were very responsive. So definitely we'll have to kind of get something set up for later on in the year with you. Just want for those that are still present, just to let you guys know, our next session is next Tuesday, and it's basically going to be about sexually transmitted infections. Do you know your status? If you do know your status or you don't know your status, please join us because it's going to be a very great presentation with our very own nurse practitioner, Kimberly Nieves. look forward to doing it and seeing you guys next week.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.